Hello, my quilty friends. It's Stacy of Stacy Creates Stuff, and today I have a quick little video about my exploration into dyeing wool. I was lucky enough to have a friend who has dyed wool before and has all the equipment to dye wool, and she invited me over to try my hand at dyeing some wool fabric. Now, I love handwork and applique and embroidery, so this is going to be the perfect thing to make my own custom colors of wool. Now, she had 3 different wool bases. They were all 100% wool, but one had a little bit of sparkle. One was a slightly different weave than the other. So 3 different bases, and I used pieces of each of them in each of the 4 colors that I came up with. So my friend had been soaking the wool. It had been over 24 hours at the point that I got there. And we had 4 different pots that we were going to use to make 4 different colors. So from her vast selection of dyes, I picked not 4, but I knew that I wanted 4 colors, and so they were all a combination of 2 different dyes or dye powders. So really with minimal measuring and just winging it, I did these 4 colors. I was aiming for a coral, which came out to be a little bit more intense than coral. It's a beautiful like tomato red orange. I have 2 purples and a really fabulous bright green. So we brought the water to a low boil and then into a simmer. So the water was nice and heated, and then added the dye. Once the dye had fully dissolved, I had already mixed up a little bit of water with the dye powders to help dissolve them. But once they were in the heated water, let them dissolve just a little bit more, and then added the pieces of wool. So in each container, I had roughly a fat quarter-ish size piece of wool from each of the 3 wool bases. And we put those in there to soak. So they stayed at a simmer for a while, and we kept checking to see if the dye had been soaked up. It was taking a while before, well, the dye never really fully soaked up into the wool because I think I used too much dye. Lesson learned. And so I had reserved a piece of each of the 3 original bases undyed. So I cut those into 4 smaller pieces and threw those in, see if maybe that would help to absorb some more dye. And while it did absorb dye, that was not a problem of the pieces absorbing the dye. The problem was that there was still dye left in the water, and we wanted to try to use that up. So I thought, well, I know you're supposed to have soaked the wool for several hours before you put it into the dye pot, but maybe we can speed that process up a little bit. So I went over and we had some more wool. This is then a 4th base, totally different from the other 3. And I took that and I soaked several pieces. So these I had cut into much smaller pieces, and I think I cut a total of 8. And then I went ahead and stuck those in. So the wool that was already in the pots had been in there for well over an hour. This was just going to go in at the end. So because most of the dye, or much of the dye, had already been soaked up, there was less dye in the water. And so those pieces came out in a more pastel version, which was fabulous. Loved it. And what is so nice is that it stayed in the same color family from all the pieces that were dyed in that pot. So here are the finished stacks of wool. We have the coral. I was really aiming for that more pastel color that's in that stack. We have the bright greens. Love these. So fun. And then we have a blue purple And then we have a red purple. And again, I love the variation between not only the pieces I put in at the end that were pastel, but also the pieces that were just from the different bases. I'm very excited to try my hand at dyeing some more wool. Let me know in the comments if you have tried your hand at dyeing wool, whether it be yarn or wool fabric. I've now done both, and I just loved the process, and I can't wait to do it again. And also, even if you haven't hand dyed before, do you do wool applique, or are you interested in wool applique? I would be thrilled to do some videos on wool applique, so let me know. Until next time, my friends, why not check out this?